What's up guys, Artem MMA Analysis here, and I'm going to be talking about PFL in this video here. I'm probably going to be uploading 2 videos today. If you guys don't know, I am isolating at the moment, so I've got 7 days off work. I've got time to kind of do what I want, and I'm thinking that I'm going to put a little bit more effort into the YouTube channel while I've got the time. And what better way to start by looking at the PFL 2022 card, which I believe was only announced yesterday or a couple of days ago at the time of recording. And this is the first episode of the regular season, and the card is so stacked. I'm just going to go over some really big names that are already on the card. Rushman Fio, who was actually the champion last year in the 155-pound division. Anthony Pettis, former Strike Force UFC champ, as you guys know. Antonio Carlos Jr., the champion of the 205-pound division, and he is also a former UFC fighter. Clay Collard and Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy Stevens, as we all know, hits really hard, but he just hasn't got a win for a very long time. Clay Collard recently beat Anthony Pettis in a win that hasn't really aged too well, to be honest. Emiliano Sordi, I believe a semi-finalist. Josh Silvera coming off a win on the, the Contender Series of PFL, the Challenger Series. Hamlet was a finalist last year. Omari Akhmedov, a former UFC fighter, and he lost his last fight in PFL, but he's coming back. Rob Wilkinson from Australia, coming back. He got cut from UFC. He's looked pretty good since then, and now he's coming back into UFC against a very good guy in Bruce Soto, so it's going to be an interesting fight. And Alex Martinez versus Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray retired a couple of years ago. He's coming out of retirement to come back and fight for the PFL, so I'm very excited for this card, man. It is so stacked. We've got 10 fights. It says 9 on the... Well, there is going to be 10 fights because we're going to have... what's it called? Another guy, Olivier Aubin Mercier versus someone will be added to this card as well. Let's get straight into it, man. We've got Alex Martinez versus Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray got cut from the UFC even though he was coming off a win over Michael Johnson, of the most consistently inconsistent person in the UFC to ever fight. He would beat top guys on his best days and lose to a lower echelon of the fighters on his worst days. So Stevie Ray, he got cut from the UFC after a win, and then he decided to retire from that. But now he's coming back after about 2.5 years to fight Alex Martinez, who is an up-and-coming prospect. Unfortunately, he is 8-2 at the moment, but at one point, man, he was 8-0. He's got a win over Loic Radzhabov, which kind of aged relatively well, because Loic Radzhabov is finding success over Eagle FC now. And he has beaten really good guys in the regional scene. There's 2 losses to Nathan Schultz, who's a very good fighter for PFL, split decision, and then another loss, and then a loss to Loic Radzhabov recently. So this is definitely not like an easy fight for Stevie Ray to come back to, but I mean, hopefully he's been training in that time since he retired, and potentially we could see his ground game being utilized against someone like Alex Martinez. I think Stevie Ray, I mean, he's got a couple of good wins on his record, man. He actually was on a little bit of a win streak at one point as well, since joining the UFC quite a few years ago, but he got cut, I think, mainly because of potentially performances. I don't know why, but because he just wasn't putting on the most exciting performances. I think that might be why he was cut. But anyway, man, I'm gonna trust Stevie Ray to get this one done. Hopefully, he's been trained in the last couple of years. Stevie Ray decision. Would not be too surprised if Martinez does win. These aren't finalized picks at all, by the way. Rob Wilkinson versus Bruce Soto. I would love for Rob Wilkinson to win this fight, man. He was coming back. He lost a couple of fights to him and Israel Adesanya. Came back a couple of years later, fought Dylan Andrews and Daniel Almeida. Both guys were not the most impressive records in MMA, but he has looked pretty good since then. He got 2 finishes there. He's also been competing in a few boxing bouts. I mean, 3 boxing bouts, and I think his boxing record is 1-0 professional, apparently. But he's been fighting for boxing as well, so he's been looking pretty good. He's been improving his stand-up, obviously. He didn't really look too bad against Israel Adesanya either, to be honest. And he was undefeated coming into the UFC as well. So a little bit unfortunate that he got cut, but he's coming back now. And now he's going to be fighting in PFL. So Bruce Soto is an up-and-coming prospect. He recently beat Travis Davis on the Challenger Series. And prior to that, he was fighting just on the regional scene, but he's not that active, man. This is his quickest turnaround in a very long time. As you can see, he's been taking long periods off, And this fight will be taking place at light heavyweight. He's come back to 205 pounds. Rob Wilkinson is probably going to have to put on a little bit of weight for that one, but he's going to have very, very noticeable height and reach difference here. And I think that Rob Wilkinson, man, I think he can utilize that. He's improved his stand-up. I'm going to trust in Rob Wilkinson at the moment anyway. Murray Akhmedov fighting Victor Pesta. Personally, don't know anything about Victor Pesta. I'm just going to say that right now. But he is very tall and he's got a very good reach for this division at 205 pounds. He's on a little win streak over some pretty good guys. Stefan Poitz, Ricardo Nostalgia, and Ildemar Alcantara, if I have said any of them right. Over fighting for Octagon, I believe that promotion is, which is a very respectable promotion outside of the major leagues. You know, he's fighting Omari Akhmedov. He didn't really look too good against Jordan Young, and unfortunately, Jordan Young did pass away quite recently. So, condolences to his family and friends. But prior to that, though, Omari Akhmedov did lose a decision to Brad Tavares. I don't think he did win that fight. He beat Tom Breeze, lost Chris Weidman, and beat in Heinisch, who's a top 15 prospect at the moment, I believe. So, I mean, a pretty good win to have on your record. But Omari Akhmedov just hasn't really looked incredible in the last couple of years. I don't know anything about Pesta whatsoever. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about him. But I also know that Akhmedov hasn't looked the same recently for some reason. So I think I might just pick Pesta for now. I'm picking Martin Hamlet in this one here. He was a finalist, I believe, in the last PFL season. I think he was a finalist in the last PFL season. He isn't... Sorry, I don't know where I was going there. But Theodoros Akalosis is actually a pretty good guy as well, 11-5. But his record is a little bit dicey, and he hasn't fought for over 4 years. I mean, I can't really trust that. I've really got to go with Martin Hamlet in this one. He did make it, I believe, all the way to the finals or the semi-finals in the PFL last year. So I think I can trust on that a little bit more. Theodoros, he hasn't fought for 4.5 years. I mean, what can you really say apart from that? So I will be going with Martin Hamlet there. Emiliano Sordi versus Josh Silvera. This is a test for Josh Silvera, and I think it's a test that he might actually pass. He was kind of exposed in the last season to not really have a good gas tank. If he couldn't finish his opponents in the first round, he would fade, and I think that's where Josh Silvera really just has to survive that first round with Sordi. But Emiliano Sordi is a very interesting fighter. He kind of does his own thing. I would like to compare him to Michel Pereira, even in like a weird way. Like he fights kind of similarly, but not really like at all. But no, he did get I would say a little bit exposed to not really have the greatest cardio. If he can't get his opponents out in the first round, he can fade a little bit. Josh Silvera, though, has not fought the level of competition that Emiliano Sordi has, in my opinion, whatsoever. But I think this is a test for Silvera, and it seems like the Tapology votes are very heavily favouring Silvera. Maybe that's just because he looked so amazing in his Challenger Series fight to get into the PFL over Muhammad Juma, where he submitted him. But also former LFA champion, I mean, and he's very active as well. I do like the activeness here. I'm going to be going Josh Silvera, but I would not be very surprised if Emiliano Sordi is able to get the job done. Wouldn't be very surprised at all, to be honest. Clay Collard versus Jeremy Stephens. This is a banger, man, and I'm so hyped for this fight. Originally, I was like, oh, dude, Clay Collard's got this. And then I was like thinking, oh, you know what? Jeremy Stephens could probably land a big shot. It's a new organization. He's going to be wanting to prove himself. And I kind of go back to Clay Collard, and Clay Collard's got very good boxing. I mean, he took a few years off to follow a boxing career in MMA before he came back to fight Anthony Pettis, and he won. And a win that hasn't aged as well was like you would kind of expect it to. I think from memory as well, this Rushman Fio fight was like very controversial decision. I can't remember for sure, but I think that was a very controversial decision anyway. But no, what he did was he was fighting in MMA for a while. And then in 2019, he decided to do some boxing fights. He won a few, he lost a few. And then he came back to PFL in 2021. He beat Anthony Pettis. And as a massive underdog as well, might I add. And now he's come back, and now he's going to be fighting Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens, though, as we all know, pretty big losing streak, or I guess unwinning streak, because he had like a no contest in there. So, yeah, just a pretty bad losing streak for Jeremy Stephens. He hasn't won a fight since 2018. But he does have power in the hands, man. He did knock out Josh Emmett, who is like a top 10 prospect right now at 145. But prior to that though, just hasn't really been beating the best opponents. He did fight. I mean, he's been fighting really good guys. Just hasn't been beating them. So I think I'm kind of gonna be trusting the level of competition here, maybe, and just trust that Jeremy Stephens can put it on Clay Collard. But I just don't know, man. Jeremy Stephens hasn't looked amazing, but Clay Collard, man, he's good, but I don't know if he's gonna be like ready for Jeremy Stephens here. I think this is actually a very good opportunity for Jeremy Stephens to jump back with a pretty good win. Antonio Carlos Jr., former UFC fighter, I think he got cut after only a couple of losses. He came back and he won the $1 million. He won PFL 2021, which is pretty respectable. He's got insane jiu-jitsu. I think he's definitely a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Sorry, he went on a 3-fight losing streak. But at one point though, he was actually looking quite good in the UFC, man. He won the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 3, and he won a couple, lost a couple, but then he went on a pretty decent win streak here. Got stopped by Ian Heinisch, Uriah Hall, and Brad Tavares, and that's when the UFC decided that they were going to give him the cut. He won a few decent fights here in PFL, and now he's the PFL 2021 champion. He won the $1 million. Good for him, probably one of the biggest paydays of his MMA career. And now he's fighting a guy coming up from the regional scene, and I just don't think that Dylan Monte is going to be ready for Antonio Carlos Jr.'s submission skills. I'm going to go with Antonio Carlos by submission with a lot of confidence in this one. I don't think anyone could really convince me that Dylan is going to get the win. Okay, Anthony Pettis versus Miles Price. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is PFL's kind of like desperate shot at getting a win for Anthony Pettis. And at first I was like, you know what, like, Miles Price isn't actually that bad. Like, his wins are pretty good on his record. He beat Peter Queally 11-4. He did lose to a 24-6 guy, which is fine. Beat 8-6, beat 8-2. Like, he's been beating and losing to pretty decent levels of competition. It's not like he's fighting the lowest of the low. But the problem with Miles Price is that I've kind of noticed is that he hasn't actually fought for 3 years. I can't trust that that time off, man. Like, that's when he was 30 years old to 33. That's kind of like, I guess, like your prime, or like just kind of exiting your prime sort of area, in my opinion. Because I feel like you're in your prime. Most fighters are in their prime around the age of 30 to about 30. From like between like 28 and 32, I feel like it's like the ideal, and 30 is the best. Miles Price took that time off. I don't know how I feel about that, man. Anthony Pettis is pretty old now. He is 35. And he is on a 2-fight losing streak in the PFL. He was I don't actually know why he left the UFC, but he did leave the UFC after 2 wins, Alex Morono and Donald Cerrone. The Alex Morono win aging pretty well, but the losses to Clay Collard and Rushman Fio aren't really too good. The Rushman Fio fight, split decision, and we all know PFL judges are pretty unreliable. But I'm going to Anthony Pettis. I think he can win this fight. Miles Price just hasn't fought for 3 years. I just cannot pick a guy that hasn't fought for that long against Anthony Pettis, in my opinion. Rushman Fio versus Don Madge. Very interesting that I'm going to point this thing out here. Rushman Fio was your PFL 2021 champion of the 155-pound division, and he's been faded pretty heavily by Tapology, man. 38% are picking him, 63% are picking his, or 62% I guess are picking his opponent, Don Madge, who has never fought in the PFL before. He's actually taken a little bit of time off. So he recently fought Nathan Williams and submitted him 4 months ago on PFL number 7 or number 10 or so. And prior to that, though, he was winning on the UFC. Beat Tate Edwards, who is Artem Lobov's son. Oh, so proud of saying that. Shout out to Artem Lobov, man, the best fighter in the world. Freeze the I guess that win is alright, but I don't know, man. It's very difficult, hard to predict, because as I said, we've got like this 2-year gap between his last couple of fights, and Rushman Fio recently did beat Luke Rudzabov by decision to win the PFL 2021 strap, I guess you could say, or the $1 million. So like, we've got a very good fighter here in Rushman Fio. I'm going to just be slightly edging Rushman Fio here, but I do think that Don Madge probably does have better finishing power. And that's kind of the pick, but it's very hard to look at. But I kind of didn't really want to make this video about my predictions. I wanted to make this video more about just talking about how stacked this card is. It is absolutely insane for a card outside of the UFC or even Bellator to have a card this stacked, I feel. And I feel like PFL has definitely done a great thing here. They're putting on their new signees. They're putting on Jeremy Stevens, who's one of their newer signees. They're putting on a couple of Challenger Series guys like Josh Silvera, and they had someone else as well who I've completely forgotten. But Emiliano Sordi, finalist, I think, or semi-finalist. Antonio Carlos Jr. and Rushman Fio are winners of last year. Amari Akhmedov, former UFC fighter, and Rob Wilkinson as well. Stevie Ray coming out of retirement as well. This is a good card. This is a great card to come back to. It is taking place on a Wednesday though, which is really painful. Actually, what is 5:30 p.m. Eastern time to New Zealand time? Because it's at 10 a.m. I'm gonna be at work. I'm actually gonna miss I'm gonna miss the card. Oh, god damn it! Why do they have to put it on a Wednesday? Oh well, I guess they've got more of an American audience. So unfortunately, I'm actually gonna miss this card. I'm gonna be at work, so that kind of sucks. But anyway, it's still a great card. I will be making predictions in the future about it. So if you made it this far, please do subscribe. I've got a Discord channel below. Feel free to join that as well. I'm trying to get a few more people in that, and I'll see you guys later.